food.
Oops,
I'm
not
like,
yet.
here, I'll just leave.
We're just started. We're just getting started. Thanks for coming.
Hi.
Hi.
I know 4 out of 6 of you. Yeah, right. No, it's okay. Well, I guess so we are recording and we're live, so people are tuning in.
Oh, no, we're just recording.
Oh, okay. I was like, I can speak to a computer of people. No, that's good. So I'm Brittany Brooks. I'm going to go about this as if I don't know you. And then one day I'm going to present this to, a large arena.
Yeah.
So we're learning about BRRRRs today. And my name is Brittany Brooks. I am the broker owner of Momentum Realty. And I guess I'm going to go into a little bit about, let's look at that right now, who I am. So, oh, hi, Taylor. Welcome. So I did not grow up in Jacksonville. I'm from the DC, Virginia metro area. And we moved here in 2014. So coming up on 8 years, or I guess now it's over 8 years. What year is it? 2022. Yes. So did not know anybody. We were in accounting and finance, my husband and I, and then bought our first home and realized, how much of a disaster it was with people who are not taking care of consumers at a high level, and saw how much money that agents were making. And so we said, we can do this better. Went into real estate, and the rest is history. We had the Brooks Group. I've worked with many of you, and now people at our brokerage, but we had a real estate team that did really well. And that was the basis for the cash we made to start investing. And so momentum in our brokerage came a lot later, but really what it comes down to is like, we had to have cash to start this. And so how do you do that? And that was through the sales business. So I wouldn't want to say exactly how much you would need, but at the time we were recycling about $200,000 of income that we had made extra that year. So we had decided to, at our peak, go minimalist. We paid off our home, which was a mistake, because then we refinanced later, being like, what are we doing? The whole goal was to recycle the funds and have a higher velocity of money that we could use for other investments. And so we paid off our home, our primary, and then with the extra funds decided to BRRRR. So we bought a home, we rehab it, you eventually refinance it and rent it and get your money back. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So we did about 4 of them, all within a span of about 6 months to a year. And some went really well. Some did not go well. There's fun stories that we'll talk about as we look at pictures of what could go wrong and things to think about. And so why a BRRRR over other investment opportunities? Because a lot of times people think, okay, well, I have to put 25% down, and then, hopefully the rents will increase, and hopefully my equity will increase. And it's a long-term 15, 30-year project. And we had the same thoughts as well until we learned about this method. So this is a book by David Green. He is podcast host / owner, probably of Bigger Pockets. So if you're not following Bigger Pockets, that's where all the investment methods come from in terms of conversation. They do that at a high level. That's what their podcast is about, is how to do wealth creation and wealth building at a high level, mainly through investments and creative strategies. So there's a lot in this book to take in, and we're just going to go over high level. But pros and cons, which I actually, now that we have a small group, I think we should do pros and cons after. But why BRRRR compared to other methods is really just the velocity of your money, like the speed and recycling of your money. The goal is that you're getting it back, which we'll talk about, by refinancing. But the con is, compared to a traditional method where you would need like 20 to 25% down immediately, you have to have more money to almost purchase the entire property in cash, rehab it, and get a higher amount back. So you're getting it back, but you have to put the money up front. So trade-offs for each side. The first method, 25% down, is just a slow growth method. It just takes a while, and it's safe. safer, I'd say, but it's predictable and safer. The goal with the BRRRR is that you are putting more up front, but you are potentially getting all of it, a little bit less. We got a little bit less. We'll talk about each one that we did. But majority is that you get your money back, but it takes about 6 months of a seasoning period to get it back. So if you need those funds, it's not really a great strategy. So we had excess funds, and this was a strategy that we said we can get them at a huge discount. We'll talk about 75% ARV. And so all the properties we looked at were like, okay, can we get them for 75 cents on the dollar after everything's said and done, refinance them, get the money back. So that kind of makes sense. Like you're buying it, you're rehabbing it to get a higher value. You buy it in cash, knowing that when you rehab it, there's a higher value overall, and then you're refinancing, you're getting 75% back. And so the goal is that you're getting almost all your money back, but it takes some time.
So 100% cash.
100% cash. I know there are people that do creative financing methods, of course, and seller financing. We did not do that. So my experience is, I guess, how you would do that with BRRRR. And this book does go into it in multiple methods, but we didn't personally do that. We bought ours at foreclosure auction. So we were scouring the website, Duval County Clerk of Courts, because we had our pool of money to invest. But instead of saying, okay, 25% on this home, 25% on this home, and then buy 3 homes, now it's all used up. How do we use our money, put it in a home, get it back, put it in another home, get it back, and keep doing it. So you might leave a little bit of money in the game, and that's fine, but it's less than you would have overall at 25%. We'll talk about how that happens. So let me go, and I'm going to flip through a few things because I have folders of all our analysis. But let's go over, we're going to hit this again. I want to talk about after we've kind of gone over the story. Then if we revisit pros and cons, it'll make a little bit more sense. So we'll keep this in mind as we're going through.
Are you going to be taking questions throughout, or?
Yeah, you guys,
Okay.
I mean, we have a small group, so if you want to raise your hand and ask some clarifying questions. Yeah.
How many properties did you guys analyze before doing the first deal?
So
I'm sure it was a ton.
well, okay, so that goes into, our method was the foreclosure auction. So we discovered the foreclosure auction, and every week, what we would do in our process is we would look up how many, well, I don't know here. Looks like these are all, yeah, these are done. So there's 6 tomorrow. So a week ahead, because they get canceled or something changes, maybe there's a lien on a property, and then someone's like, oh, you know what? I don't want to go into foreclosure. I'm going to pay it off, or something happens. They're able to figure it out, a way to get out of it. But so we would click every month on the week ahead. And so we would start a week ahead, look at all the properties, and we would start to analyze them. And so what I mean is we would look at the address, and we had a whole spreadsheet. So here is our spreadsheet that we have, where we would plop in all of the addresses. The S, we would go on Zillow and we'd look up the S. So I didn't go into the definitions yet, but ARV is after repair value. So a lot of homes, you guys know, like, let's say, they're worth 200, but foreclosure is selling them for like 50 or 60 or 75. And so we would go in and say, okay, just without even knowing the condition of the home, what is the value? What's the after repair value? Where if the home is wonderful and we look at comps in the area and we know that if it's in good condition and it has upgrades, what's that after repair value? Because the goal is that we're getting it for 75% or less. And I'm going to try to, hopefully it might not get confusing, but the banks are going to lend you 75% of this after repair value. So the goal is always that you are buying it at least 75% or lower. And now I would say that because homes are overpriced, that you want to try to get them at like 50 to 60 cents on the dollar. So 50 to 60%. So right now, John and I discussed, if we were redoing this, we'd be looking at homes that were at like a 50% discount. So we would like plot the addresses in, we would go to Zillow. So this is basically the Zillow algorithm of like, if you're not in real estate or you're just pulling a quick analysis on what it should be, we would just fill in the ARV, which is the after repair value. So what is the estimated Zestimate?
You would pull probably like comps, like 3 maybe?
Well, we would just do really quick high level. So so we are trying to figure out which homes we should even pursue, but we do drive-bys.
Okay.
So we are trying to figure out, and let's say it used to be there'd be like 10 or 15. And so we'd spend a day analyzing the homes that were coming up for the next week. And this is how we would do it. And then once we had ones that even met the criteria, because if a home is, the ARV is 200 and it's being auctioned for 190, we're not even, that's not even worth it, right? So we're not even gonna go after it. We're not even gonna go drive by and look at it, try to peek in the windows, see if it makes sense. So this is our driving list to then, like, we're filtering down to the ones that we wanna go for. And so we would take the whole list, fill in the ARV, we would find out the total expenses as much as we could. So we're looking at permits. We are pulling roof, AC information. We're pulling maybe like prior MLS details that we can find in pictures, seeing maybe what the house condition still is like. Because what if it was, you know, an issue before? It's probably going to still be an issue now. But we really filled in the expenses once we did a drive-by. We were able to see like, oh, we don't know the age of the roof. Okay, well, this roof has shingles missing. It's probably needing a new roof. And so then this would be a formula of 75% after the ARV. It should all be a formula driven, but it's not. So cash out is we expect to get 75% back of the ARV. And then there's always closing costs. So that's just the sunk cost. And so this is,
What's your last?
yeah, cash out the 75% less. And we're going to go over our different models and like the math and the formula consistently. But this is where we could quickly look at, okay, how much equity would be kept in the deal? Because we were also saying, if we can't BRRRR this, could we flip it? So is there an opportunity where maybe the cash flow is not there from like a monthly basis? It's not going to make sense financially to hold it long-term, but could we make a quick 15 or 20K? Remember, we're real estate agents, so we don't have to pay ourselves commission. And so there were some benefits to that. So you're looking at the list, you're filling in high-level Zillow information, and you're saying, does this make sense to even drive by? And so in the drive-bys, we would be knocking. We would be looking in the windows, seeing if a home was in great condition or if it's not. And so these always had to meet the 75% threshold. There always had to be at least 25% equity for it to even make sense for us to purchase it, because that's how much the lender is going to give us back once we buy it. So yeah, we would go knock and see if there were tenants or anybody living in the house. A lot of times there were. Some people would let us in and some people wouldn't. And so we've got some fun stories with that of some homes that were a complete disaster that we, you know, thank God we did not buy. And some that were in insanely amazing condition that if all the investors had been doing what we had been doing and had seen what a great deal these were, they would have been all over it and driven the price up. Because when you're going into foreclosure auction, you were competing with other people. And so you never know who's on the other side. A lot of times it's Yellowbird investors. Kyle and Pat would do a lot of research too. And then we would text each other afterwards and be like, why didn't you guys buy this? And they're like, oh, blah, 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 or whatever. So, so the first step, analysis, what makes sense to even drive and look at, driving and looking at it the best we could. And that's where the risk comes in, because maybe the blinds are closed. There's no one there. You're just doing a worst case scenario of, okay, if I had to gut this whole thing, because back then, if there's like, you know, 80 grand or more of equity that you're immediately going to get, what's the worst that could happen? Which I have to say with a grain of salt, but what's the worst that could happen of the rehab inside, right? Think about it. Like if we had to redo plumbing or electrical, how much equity do I have to play with that this would still make sense? Because the goal is to get the money back and just get cash flow on the rent once we rent it out. Okay. So these are the ones that we ended up keeping. And at the time, this was the additional equity where we said, okay, and one of them, the Belle Reve condo, I was competing with someone on the internet and I was like, man, they're driving up the price. And then I was like, there's no way this is going to make sense with HOA fees and all that. But I said, if I can, you know what, it's easy to flip. I've sold these condos before. What's the worst that could happen with rehab? It wasn't that bad. We had seen pictures previously. We're like, okay, maybe a new AC, but could I make 10, 15 grand? I mean, who doesn't want an extra 10 to 15 grand? I can do that. That's easy. So you're figuring out what's worth your time too. And then knowing that if you lock up your funds, are you going to miss other opportunities? So that's where some risk comes into play, is like thinking about, okay, what could come down the pipeline that could be a better situation? Do I want to waste my time paying $110,000, locking that up, for a condo that I'm gonna flip for 20K, or do I wanna wait for a bigger opportunity? So I'm fine here.
Okay, so that was our process.
And then after we drove out and we're like, okay, we fill in the numbers for what we think the total expenses are gonna be, which that's really high. I don't know. Oh, it's pulling from, I'm sorry, it's pulling from these other formulas that we're gonna go into.
How do you figure out your expenses?
So let's go to the first one, Oak Bank. This is pulling from, it's 150. That seems really high. This is, I think John filled back in what we had done. So
Yeah, question, Brittany.
yeah,
I was just saying, like, how are you figuring out your expenses and now that inflation has changed?
Yeah,
are you
so that's the
trying
thing
to
is-
with some of your partners, like plumbers or whatever.
so having solid contractors was key here. So before we set out on this project, we interviewed a lot of contractors, explaining to them what our vision was. And like, hey, can you know, we have a lot of volume coming up. We're gonna try to do one of these a month or one of these every 2 months. And we need someone really reliable that's not too expensive. And so we had ended up finding Joseph Hernandez, and he had a crew at the time. He wasn't super busy and he had a lot of time to give. And we said, if you are loyal to us, we'll be loyal to you. We've got, you know, we know the realtor community, we know people that are gonna need help. So don't screw us over, right? Because like the partners are gonna be huge in this, right? Knowing your lender that you can actually get a loan and refinance, and they know your numbers. Vendor partners, because it's like how quick you can change your money over, right? So if repairs are taking 60, 90 days and like we're waiting forever and they can't churn and burn, that's my money locked up for other opportunities. And so we knew that they could get stuff done in a couple weeks, and then we could get the loan process started. And so it was like quick, because we had trusted people. So that's where it really comes down to like making sure that you have everybody lined up, that you trust, and that, you know, they're going to do quality work, and that they're going to be honest with you. They're going to say, like, we used to bring Joe out with us whenever we win the property, or even if we had access somehow, we could see in the windows and be like, hey, can you run by Wessex? Can you peek in and kind of give us an idea of what this is going to be? If there's nobody occupying the property. And so he could like be a runner and go give us a high level estimate, and then we would see if it would make sense. And then also I would say, like, if you're not a realtor, which a lot of you are, having those partners that are going to tell you like what makes a difference and what doesn't, right? So like floors, bathrooms, counters versus doing things that don't matter and may not add value from an appraiser perspective, because it all relies on that appraiser going in and giving you a high value ARV after repair value, because you're going to get 75% of that money out.
Does every lender have a program that does this, or only specific, or?
So it's actually like these were taken out in our personal name. Like it's our income was there, and that's where you have to make sure that you have the income and the W-2, because it was like they basically saw our P&L from the year in sales, and they said, okay, like we trust that you can qualify for this loan. So it wasn't any different than if we had gone out and just said, I want to put 25% on an investment property, can I qualify? Versus this. They're basically giving you, no matter what, whether you're putting 25% down or taking a loan out for 75%, it's the same process. Just the goal is that hopefully in a BRRRR, the value gets so high that when you take out 75%, are you crossing that threshold of the money that you even put in, that now you're getting, if not all your money back, potentially more. The goal was that we could get more than our original investment, because once that value goes up and the bank gives you 75% of it, maybe you've actually gotten more back than you put in. And so that's the ultimate goal. And then you have no investment, so your return on investment is like infinite because you got all your money back. We always ended up with repairs being high and the bank not giving us a full 75%. We always ended up having around $7,000 to $10,000 or $12,000 left in the deal.
And I'm gonna tell you
And
why.
we're gonna go over, yeah. They won't give you the full 70, like,
Because with delayed financing, they can only give you as much cash as you, so if they bought it for
we're gonna go, yeah.
138 or whatever they bought it for, that's how much they're gonna get on the property. That's the max. So whatever the cash investment is, they'll finance on that.
that's if, so we did a deal. So, and we're gonna get into that, like, I guess we're getting into it now. So The seasoning period, when we were doing this, was 3 months.
Okay,
So now it's like 6 months.
okay, so y'all waited for the seasoning period.
We didn't, because we knew our lender well enough and they trusted us that they said, we can either give you 75% of the after repair value. So you get your repairs done, then we'll refinance. And then we'll do the appraisal and we'll see what 75%, give or take. It wasn't always 75, but like majority of that new value is. Or you can get 75% of what you've put into it, give us an estimate of the repairs, and we'll go off of that. And so I'll show you the two numbers where if we had waited, we would have gotten higher, but we just said, let's get our money off the table now and not do a seasoning period of 3 to 6 months because we need our cash back. We need to go do this again. And so they gave us lower because we decided to take the money off now. I don't think you can do that anymore. And I don't, so that's for me to say, like, you have to be really careful because now the seasoning period is 6 months. So that's 6 months that your money is locked up.
By seasoning, you mean?
Like after you bought it, holding it, yep.
But there are some
But there are,
non-QM stuff.
there are like people that will do like the 3 months. I think it's pretty rare to find, but you could find them. I don't know what the trade-off is.
The rate.
Yeah, correct. And our rate, so here's the thing, caveat. This was back in 2019. Things were cheaper, rates were cheaper. There were foreclosures still in the market. This is, I would almost think of this as, you may not get this kind of opportunity right now, but this is something to be thinking about in the next year. As the market goes down and foreclosures come on the table and, you know, as even if the rates are higher, if the cash flow makes sense, and we'll get into that, the numbers and the math still make sense for the opportunity. And so there's a lot of noise of like, well, the rates are higher or the prices, yada, yada, yada. But when you're locking in this stuff, and then you're looking at your ROI, your return on investment of how much cash you had in the deal and what your cash flow is with rents, it may still make sense. I don't want to say that it makes sense right now because we're expecting prices and rents to come down with the recession. But if you can like learn about this now, study the book, and be thinking about the opportunities and building up your cash reserves in the next year or so, what opportunities are going to come down the pipeline? Cash reserves, right?
That is the key.
Yeah.
You can't do the BRRRR method. I'm not saying you can't do investments, but like you cannot do the BRRRR method without cash.
Yeah.
Overall, I don't know how it plays out with other creative types of financing, but it's not the typical method. So I'm not going to talk about it because I don't really know about it. Okay. So I guess we can talk about, let's just talk about pros and cons. So con, 6 months now. So your money's locked up for 6 months. So you have to have cash and be able to deal with the runway and the timeline, and then also cash for your risk, right? Like expenses may be higher, closing costs, etc., higher interest rate. And so cash is king, they always say, but especially with the BRRRR method. Let's see, we already talked about like the BRRRR pro is, or con is that it's buildup of the cash versus 25% down. But the pro is that you're potentially getting all, if not more, of your money back. You just have to wait. So velocity of money is the same thing, just recycling of the money. Con is that interest rates back then were 4 to 5%. I don't know what the numbers would look like at 6 to 8%, which is why I said nowadays you'd probably have to get the home at like a 50% discount. And I'm not saying that that doesn't exist. But you'll be competing with other investors, etc. So it's just something to pay attention to. We bought some from one from wholesaler, so Yellowbird, one from three from foreclosure auction, which we'll talk about. Like I have every home that we did and like the method, the prices. So we'll get into like each home. But I'm more so want to talk about like the different ways to find these. So wholesaler, your realtor, oh gosh, you're in lending. So there's people that call maybe for some creative help or like distress. It's honestly comes from distress situations. So if you see a home is, you know, you're driving by and there's a lot of weeds growing up and something's going on, go knock on the door, go talk, I don't know, go talk to them, see what's going on. So wholesalers, foreclosure auction, liens, tax liens, like there's different ways that you can find the distress situations, and the book covers a lot more of that. So ours were mainly foreclosure auction and wholesalers. The wholesaler that we dealt with made a huge mistake. And even came back to us, which we'll talk about, being like, I'm sorry, guys, can I, like, I don't know why he thought we'd say yes. Like, we undervalued this property. Can I raise the price? We're like, no, sorry.
We have
You dummy. Yeah, sorry. Thanks to us. So we'll talk about that price. So another risk is may not know the full condition of the property, like we talked about. We did our best, and we had to decide whether we were willing to take the risk. So we did our best to find out the condition of the property with a lot of diligence on permits, MLS details from the old listings, just looking up the age, looking up roof and HVAC information. Those are going to be the most expensive items. And then doing drive-bys and then hoping someone would open the door. Even if they just opened the door so we could like look for them to tell us no, at least they've opened it, because we're like, okay, things are still standing. It doesn't smell like drugs are coming out of here. I think we're doing okay. And then this is a big one, is maintaining your job. So we had a deadline to get this done and maintain our sales business, because we were in the discussions to open our new brokerage. And so we had to maintain our sales numbers for the bank on our 1099 to trust that we could pay back those loans when we refinanced. So for independent contractors versus W-2, it's gonna be really important that you can honestly obtain a loan. And maintaining that so they trust they can give you your money back. And just overall investments, the goal is cash flow, guys. Like cash flow, predictable to the best that you can, and you're getting a return on your money. So I'll show you guys the goal. And this is just kind of inspirational, I guess. When we bought all these, so 15, 16, 17, 2019, half of them were BRRRRs, and then half of them were that we moved every 6 months. So we got a primary rate, and then after 6 months, we moved to another house. And so these homes that are now being rented out were primaries, and these ones were the investments. We sold 2 of the investments, which we'll go through, but I want to show you that if I add up the cash flow of these ones that we are renting out, it's $5,000 a month. My mortgage is $3,000 a month. So my husband and I are financially free, to in a sense that it pays our mortgage, it pays our grocery bill. And so this was built up over time, doing different investment methods, to that we could go, you know, more minimalist if we needed to. And we can ramp up or ramp down our lifestyle depending on what the cash flow is looking like.
You set aside money for repairs on these?
Yes, so this is our cash flow. So that's, we'll get into that, because we sold 2 of them because we were negative 15 grand so far year to date. And with the amount of equity that we've built, and I'll go over those numbers with you guys, we did decide to sell them, which goes against the model. But back then in 2019, who would have predicted our equity increases in the market that we would have had? And so our goal was like, you know, hoorah, 15, 30 years, and 30 years will be paid off, and we won't have to do anything. But guess what? In 3 years, we just saw enough increase to pay it all off. Like, so let's just say a $200,000 house that we used to have is now worth $350,000, $400,000.
Wow.
Why wouldn't we take and sell it
Yeah.
and then reinvest it? So it's our new version of recycling and velocity of money. And I have stories on those 2. And we are potentially going to sell all of these and just say, start over and go against the plan.
Why?
Because we are in a recession. We, as a lot of you were in our meeting that we just had, we expect prices to come down. And so if prices are going to come down and other people aren't buying your homes in the near future, or sorry, if you wouldn't buy it back and the numbers don't make sense for you, why necessarily would someone else buy it? And therefore, if there's no demand or there's less demand, you're going to see prices drop, because the homes are too expensive now and the rates are too high. And so thank you for saying why. And so for us, we don't expect that it can go up anymore. If not, it'll drop. So we are expecting on our homes that 10 to 20% correction. And so even though we're getting cash flow and our ROI is like 25% plus, if we can, because all that equity gain, we don't have access to, it's just sitting there.
Yeah.
We did our BRRRR and we did our refinance before all this equity gain. And so it's just kind of hanging out there. So if you expect it to drop 10%, why would you do that? Yeah, well, we have, correct. So we had, correct. So we have leases in place that we have to wait. And so as each lease comes, so here we go. We've got January. So Chikora is coming up in the spring. So if anybody wants a home, yes, we are selling Chikora. I know. We bought it for $460. It is now worth $720.
But that's crazy.
That was our primary, so like we moved into that one, that is insanity. And while we had always said, move every 6 months, use it as a rental, we are in a very unique, I'm not saying this doesn't work. This did back then, it works for different markets. In the next year or two, as everything comes down and restabilizes, it will probably make sense again. But we've never seen 30-year equity gains. Like our goal was to wait the 30 years.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing it right now.
So take it.
Take it, put it in a really low interest rate, safe thing, and call it a day.
But is it not worth holding on to the properties? I mean, you've still got.
Each one, it depends.
5 years to retirement, but then, I mean,
Correct.
it's not gonna go down.
So you could either say, okay, and we'll do the math. I'll show you the math. So because I've been in a huge heated debate with Jonathan.
Yeah.
Because I was like, correct. So it's the same as saying, well, we can maybe hold that thought. Because I think when we go to each one, I can add up the annual return. So let's say it's like 12K a year. Well, I think of it in a couple ways. How many years does it take to capture 12 grand a year? But all the repairs that you're gonna have down the road, the freaking headaches of all the calls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though these are great properties, they're in good shape. So we are lucky.
The risk of layoffs and potentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Rent's coming back down.
Yeah, in 10 years time.
Correct. So like, it's almost like saying,
Or-
it's like the stock market. People are like, well, it comes up, it comes down. Well, with your home, why would you wait for it to come up and down,
Yeah.
back up to where you were?
Mm.
Or rents come down, come up.
Unless it's your primary, I guess.
Correct, unless it's
Yeah.
your primary. So, or you can say, I mean, I have to do the math model to say, okay, you're taking $500,000 of equity off the table and investing it at like 4%. And now you're making 20K safely. And waiting for opportunities.
Well,
So that's the thing too, is like, our goal is to go more into commercial.
Mhm.
And you can't do that without potentially a lot of the cash. And so we're saying, why leave it here when this is a lower return on our investment? It's really the opportunity cost. It's all this equity gain that we never expected. If everything had stayed the same and it was only going up 2 or 3 or 4%, it would make sense to just hold on to it, because the goal is that you're gonna get the equity in 15, 20 years. And it's like, okay, that's our retirement, because it was always our retirement fund. Well, guess what? We just locked out our retirement fund in the past 3 years. And are we willing to wait? It's almost like if someone was like at the blackjack table, here's $4 grand, or you were going to sit here for 3 hours and make 15, 20, 25. So do you want 4 or do you want your 20 now? Could go up and down. You could get more than 20. Which one do you want? We're going to take the 20.
Are you guys selling all of the properties? As they come,
That is the goal.
okay.
That is the goal, which makes me have a little heart attack.
I know, I was wondering how you're.
Because these were like my my babies.
Yeah.
But we'll go over the numbers. Okay, so let's do the first one. So yeah, numbers, that's the problem. Numbers don't lie and it's math, but it's hard to like put the emotion away. Okay, so we talked about 75 ARV. That's what we're always looking at. That's like this estimate if you think about the high level after repair costs. 1% rule. So when you guys are looking at investments, typically things will cash flow, they will cash flow appropriately if the rent is 1% of the purchase price. So what do I mean by that? So a $200,000 house, the rent is going to be $2,000 a month, right? Give or take, we got some HOA fees, we have repairs. But this was always the benchmark, and we were also looking at the analysis of drive-by of like, in this area, can I get these rent prices? And so there's usually a gap between the really low cost homes that you're not gonna be able to get the rent. And then also the really high priced homes, like a $500,000 house, you're not gonna be able to rent it for $5,000. So our bread and butter of these BRRRRs and these investments were usually that 200 to 400. Well, at the time they were like max 250, but now they're like 400. So I'd say like, you know, that 75K to 250 range, because otherwise the rents didn't really make sense, or we didn't want homes in areas that the price is like 60 grand, because what kind of quality tenants are you potentially going to get? They're going to have a lot of headaches. Same as agents, when you're working with buyers and sellers, those really low budget buyers are sometimes a lot harder, not sometimes, almost always harder than those $1 million clients. Yeah. Oh yeah. And so just the things you have to think about are like HOA fees. So if you're buying a condo, you're going to have HOA fees, maybe higher property taxes in different areas, additional insurance, and then of course, interest rate variation. So that's where that 1% rule is a good guide, but then you have to go further. So it was always those high level analyses that we did to then figure out, okay, what makes sense to put our time into to research further. So 75%, can I get that? Like, is it being sold for 75% or lower? 1% rule for rent, because the goal was to rent it out. All right, we already talked about this, what our process was. Door knock to see if it's occupied. And then always, if we were going to go after a foreclosure, title insurance, which ended up saving us on one of our deals that we will talk about. That was almost $150,000 lost.
Oh, wow.
So there's risk and reward. So every single time we had a list for the week, that was just a sunk cost where we'd call up our title company and say, we'd like to get a title policy to protect us, make sure we're buying the first mortgage, make sure there's no other liens. And then our title attorney would come back to us with a report saying, because he knew exactly what we were doing, right? The vendors knew what our plan was. They knew when to tell us, you don't need this or you do. And then they would come back being like, hey, this isn't actually a foreclosure. This is some random lien. So you're not going to actually be buying rights to the property. So don't go after this one, or this one, these ones are good. Do you want me to go forth with title insurance? And then after our analysis, we'd say, sure, give us policies on boom, boom, boom. And so each one, it depended on, I don't know, Taylor, what does it depend on? Because I noticed when I went back, every price was different. So like, is it the size of the home? Is it?
The prices differ a lot.
Oh yeah, you bring it down.
The sales price.
Okay, so it's a percentage of the purchase price. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So
that's regulated by the state.
Okay, so it's right. So it depended, but typically when we look at these, our purchase price on each one was a $600 to $900. Almost think of it as like an inspection. Like this is your inspection fee, because they're doing all the research of the chain of title to make sure that you actually would be purchasing a sound investment if you ended up winning the auction. And so these are just costs. Think about that you have, it's like an inspection, it's sunk cost. This was our diligence. And then immediately changing of locks. As soon as we won it, we'd send J&J locksmith, who is wonderful, out. And it usually costs between $150 to $250, et cetera, to change the locks, depending on how many were needed. All right, so now the fun part. So real examples. Okay, so this, and I'm actually just gonna go to our folder. So this is Wessex. This is in Orange Park. Photos. And we are extremely organized, okay?
Yes.
Every property has every document. We're gonna go into the spreadsheet. So now we're gonna be on Wessex. These are all the repairs, but I summarized all this in the slide. But I want to show you guys what it looked like before. So this is one that we had landed on. And here's the old photos. It was bright red. And these little sago palms were everywhere. So we didn't know we had to remove them until after we bought the house. And that was an unexpected repair. And there was a lot of trees. And then when Joe went out, he was like, you know, you got to get rid of these. Like the roots are going to grow into the house and they're pain butt. And then, hey, this tree is dead. And when we did a drive-by, we didn't know. So these are unexpected costs. So John and I always say 15 to 20% add in for extras. If you have a certain budget, 15 to 20% more. just because you never know. And hopefully you don't have more. Maybe it's less, because some of these were less than we expected. So let's get into the inside. And remember, our rehab is so people can rent it. We're not selling it and flipping it and making it perfect and beautiful. We just need to make sure that it's quality enough for people to rent it. So, you know, paint, didn't need to do floors, and I'll show you guys, but what it looks like afterwards. But it was a lot of carpet and floor and paint and fixtures, just like you would probably recommend to your seller clients. So floors, usually appliance packages. There's Joe. There's no fridge. I don't know where it is, but we had to get an appliance package. And so we would take Joe out as soon as we bought it and figure out what would make sense to do. We did the floors. He fixed the tile, but we left the tile, and the counter's fine. Sometimes he would. Yeah. Joe's our like handyman contractor. Yeah. And I forget where John met Joe. I think we were like looking at different people, and then I don't remember, but I do remember meeting him and us standing in front of like this house. I think being like, "There's an opportunity here if you don't fuck us over." And he's still our contractor today.
Worked out for him.
Yeah, it did. And now he's, you know, helps a lot of momentum. But they're contractors at the end of the day. There's pros and cons. You know, sometimes they have their subcontractors that don't show up, and yeah, it's just the life. You can find the best of the worst. Not saying Joe's the worst, but the best and the worst. So like fixtures, obviously the carpet's rough, but simple fixes, right? Really there was a lot of dry rotten wood. This roof, I believe, it doesn't look it. We did the roof. I don't remember. Yeah.
I'm not really organized my files, but I would keep it here.
Yeah, I have a synopsis, but I believe this roof had to be redone. But back then it was really cheap. So those are the old photos. And then the new photos, and I'll tell you how much it costs. And maybe let's play a game. You guys can tell me how much the budget was when we look at all this, okay? Before I tell you. So here's some paint. Yeah, that is a new roof. Yeah. So new architectural shingle roof. We got rid of trees in the back. I don't know where, but they did eventually get removed. These all got removed by our landscaper. Yeah, see, paint and well, this didn't get changed up, but he would clean up things, right? Add hardware, get lights, touch ups, baseboards if they were rotted out or needed. Honestly, paint can go a long way. Yeah, he obviously replacing the tile. It's still kind of grody.
Oh, he painted the blue.
Oh yeah, he did epoxy it over.
Quick question.
Oh wait, look at that. Look at that.
Now
And
that
then
you're
you
thinking
see, he
about-
put a frame around the window. 'Cause you know how it gets nasty.
Now that you're thinking about selling, are you having to go back now and
We have.
do a retail?
We have.
Okay.
Depending on, that'll be a good one with Astral. We'll talk about that
Okay.
one's on Astral because we did decide to sell it and we skimped out on repairs the first time
Mhm.
and then had to go back and fix and almost do now 2 years later, the costs were like double for half the work. And so we're like, we had just done it, but you never know. You never know you're gonna sell it.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
They just take care of it.
Yeah, so you can see like obviously the new fans, just carpet. Well, it looks like we had a cleaner over the window. So cleaning, I mean, like sometimes there'll be like debris, people leave stuff in the house if they're getting evicted and stuff. New appliance package, new floors. So you guys tell me what you think the rehab was.
I'd say 4 to 5 days.
Oh, you're so off.
Oh, wow.
You're so high.
Really? Okay.
Wow. Even with 30? 30?
I'm gonna think 2019 years.
Remember, this is 2019.
Yeah. Oh my.
Okay.
Wow.
Wow. That's good.
You're not gonna say
No, I didn't hear you guys. So look at this. The roof for a 30-year architectural shingle back then was 10. It's right on.
Oh, yeah, they're definitely not saying.
Correct.
And even with the AC.
Look at the AC.
Are you serious?
Now this was a 2.5 ton, but still. We did have to get like vacant dwelling policy. So I just did a high level kind of like handyman was 14 for paint, floors, We had to get a new water heater, lighting faucets, tune up of everything. But this was like the big costs, and then appliance package was $2,000.
Wow.
Right?
I missed those. That's like just the washer dryer.
Yeah, and that's what's also good about having like good contractors, is they know where to find the good stuff. Like, that's not too expensive. So that was, let's just call it 30K. And then we did the after photos. So here's high level, the info for the math. So purchased in November 2019, it was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. Now we found out after research that it is the only 2-bedroom in the neighborhood, which is not great.
Oh, wow.
And 2 bedrooms are harder to rent out. So one of the reasons that we've also decided to sell this one is because usually when they're in unique or they're far away, older properties that are going to come up on repairs, yes, your cash flow is there, and we'll go over that. Like, let's just say we're making 38% returns on our money. We're cash flowing $12,000 a year, but what are you going to be coming up against? You know, are you going to be able to rent it easily? Are you, like, what do the rents look like in the area? What's the demand look like? So we bought it for $108,000 at foreclosure auction. It was worth $165,000. And actually, I think I can go back and see what we thought it would be worth, but that might take too long. Yeah, I'm not gonna waste the time. Worth $165,000 after, like, it appraised for $165,000. And so, you know, we bought it for $108,000. All in with $108,000 plus, let's say, $30,000, it was $138,336. So this was how much we put into it. This is how much it appraised for. And this is when we had to debate with the bank, are we gonna wait and get 75% of $165,000 for $124,000? Or are we gonna just let them give us our money now at $101,000? We got $101,000. The closing costs were $406,000. And so we ended up getting, or sorry, we ended up leaving $32,000 back in the deal. So I think that is the investment.
Okay.
So if we're leaving $32,000 in, and we're getting back whatever 32 is minus, you know, we have to obviously, but you can, so we left 30% in the deal when I did the math afterwards.
But you put 108.
But we put
That's
108
cash.
plus some closing costs. Let's just say 110, right? So that was our upfront. Let's just say 110 plus $30,000 of repairs. So we were all in like 140.
Okay.
But we got back 101. The bank was willing to give us back 101.
Basically in 3 years, you can pay it off.
Correct. With, you'd pay off how much you left in.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah. But what we didn't expect, once again, was the equity increase. So,
Yes.
okay, now I want to ask you guys, because we're going to pull up Zillow, what you think this house is worth now.
260. Where is it?
330.
So you're saying 260.
Mhm.
Where was it?
With-
And it's in Orange Park. It's like, it's right off of, it's in a good area. It's like right off of, oh, I don't drive out there anymore.
Argyle.
Thank you.
It's worth almost 400 grand. 300, like, 2 bedroom.
2-bedroom.
Oh,
With
right.
2
Okay.
bedrooms. I'd say 320. Yeah, 320.
320. You said
260.
260.
I-
So you all are in the threes. You're in the twos. Okay. Let's pull up Zillow really quick. And hold on, let me make sure I have the ad. Bum, 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 bum.
Yeah.
And this is why I told Josh it was gonna be a little bit more fun
I like it. That's great.
to like see real live examples.
Yeah. Because I've never.
All right, let's see.
Oh.
246.
Wow.
So if you left 40 grand in and your home is now worth 246
I would sell.
Sell.
and you were making 12K a year,
I would
Or you can make 2. Or you can make 100.
or you can take out the equity and reinvest it, what would you do?
reinvest.
Yeah, I know, I had a hard time accepting that, but that's where we're at. We just gotta wait for the lease to end. But you can see over time too, it was beautiful. I mean, timing was everything. That the rent went from $12.95 to $13.95 to then, remember, like a year or so after COVID, like people were fighting. And so we were expecting to raise it based on our tax increases that year, because remember, you're gonna have extra taxes. It's not your primary, it's gonna go up. You don't know how much. And so people were fighting over rent, right? They needed a place to live. Inventory was super low. And so 1,700.
Yeah.
And so this is the cash flow is the 1,700 minus the mortgage, minus repair escrow, just high level, the cash flow was 12,000 a year. And so after leaving 32,000 the deal, the ROI was 38, which you'd be like, that's a beautiful ROI number, right?
It is.
Like what's this, like when you guys talk to investors and you're looking at projects, what's their cap rate? What's their ROI they want? Like their goal is like what, 10?
That's
If I can get
perfect.
10,
Yeah.
Yes.
right? Is that kind of, I forget, like, yeah, after talking to investors. So this was like, duh, you would do it.
Yeah.
But remember, pros and cons. We had to leave $140,000 in. You have to be able to withstand the 3 to 6 months to get it out. We got ours immediately by taking a lower amount up front. And I think our, oh gosh, so purchased it 2018, and let's see, when did we get our CD? So closing date was February. So about 3 months. All right.
It's a great ROI for a 2-year investment.
I know. Okay, so Oak Bank. Oh, this is a fun one. Okay. So that was our first one that we did. So we're like, okay, let's keep going. We got this. No, everything worked out in the end, obviously, but it was obviously the market too, helping cushion everything.
Yeah.
But then some of the experiences were not so great. So now we get really fun. And Oak Bank, we did our analysis. We drove by the home. We saw a car in the driveway, knocked on the door. Who answers? The guy. And we're like, hey, you know, this home is going into foreclosure next week. Or are you aware of that? Some people don't know. And that's why people will find out last minute and then they'll pay off something they didn't realize, or why people don't know their home's going to foreclosure. They have plenty of time, but it happens. This guy was, and we don't have before photos. We only, let me see. Oh no, we do. Oh yeah, we do. Okay. So this gentleman was the grandson of his grandmother. His grandmother had passed away. He had been renting out the rooms to other people. No lease, just renting out the rooms to other people. He was a drug addict. It was not good inside. And these are the old photos, but as you can see, everything is still here. It was definitely a sad situation. He let us in and we were like, this home is, it's 2008. It's up in Northside. The roof is 2008. The HVAC's 2008. So it was only about 10 years old at the time, 11 years old at the time. So we're like, this is a done deal. This makes sense. And I don't know why I don't have, you can see like everything was here, but the carpets, paint, like it was an old lady house, right? They keep their home in wonderful condition. And so we let him know, we were like, hey, it's in foreclosure. Are you planning on doing anything? He had no money. And we're like, well, if it's not us, it's going to be someone else, right? Like someone's going to be taking this home. But instead of evicting him, we did give him money. We did win the auction because remember, most people are not going to drive up. They're looking at high level numbers and they have to see if it makes sense. But if the other investors had seen what we had seen, they would have been all over it, driving up the price in the auction. We got very lucky that we went and knocked on the door. And, but yeah, you get the gist. So we ended up winning. He of course did not want to leave. We get it. He didn't have anything. And we ended up giving him cash for keys. So we said, here's $1,000. You know, you could have given him 100 or 200 and he probably would have taken it, but like he had nothing. So here's $1,000. John drove him to a hotel. He ended up giving up the keys so that we could change the locks and do all that. And that like Joe could have access to start taking everything out. So unfortunately it was like, just come gather everything and either drop it off at Goodwill or like we told him like, you know, you have 30 days because the process was going to take a little bit of time. And we ended up giving him cash for keys and we said, you can stay here for a little longer, but eventually we're going to have to go. So John took him to a hotel. He did harass us a little bit for more money. Like a week later, there was nothing we really could do, obviously. And yeah, his grandmother had died and left the home to him and no one paid the mortgage. And that's how it went to foreclosure. So I want to go back and see what we thought. Yeah, 185. So, all right. I'm trying to remember, like, at the time we were looking it up, like, I'd have to go back on Zillow and see like what the price was expected to be. But usually our appraisal that I'm putting here ended up being, if not the same, better than what we thought. We were always very conservative in our estimate. Like if we saw this estimate, we would like knock it down 10 or 15 grand just in case. So everything was always a very conservative number. Okay. So cash for pieces 1,000. Oh crap, I wasn't gonna tell you. Okay, well, next one, I'll tell you how much it was. This one was very cheap.
What'd you get? It's not- I don't think it's-
That's next. So overall, $5,000 for cash for keys, paint. I was doing before and after, but this one I was
Super good.
carpet cleaning, handyman repairs. A lot of it was like the clean out, having to get a dumpster, having to like get rid of all their stuff, which is awful. But we kind of told Joe, if you can use the stuff, like the furniture, I don't know, I didn't know what to do with it all.
That's that you can.
It just wasn't worth it. We didn't have time. We were like, we just need our money back. We need to get this going. But he has friends he'd bring over and like they would, that was like a bonus to Joe of like, if you want, he wouldn't charge us a lot for the clean out because he got to use a lot of the furniture and he would give it away. And that was the only one that had a lot of stuff in it. So it was kind of like, tough. So $5,000, let's say we bought this one for $147. But we knew it was going to be in good shape. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath built in 2008. We had already walked it. We knew even if there wasn't a lot in the deal, it's still worth it because there wasn't a lot of rehab that needed to be done. So 147, 747 was the all-in cash number. CapEx was about $6,000. So all in, we were 153. And so I did these two to show you like all in how much we were and like what we would get at 75%. And then this one, we did get 75% in the about 75%, give or take. So you can see we've actually got 72% out. So we, it wasn't a full 75, but give or take. So this is the 138 is the 75% of the appraisal less the closing costs. And so we left 72 in, I'm sorry, 12,500 in. The annual cash flow, so $1,400 a month times 12 less the mortgage, which I didn't get into all that, but the annual cash flow, if I multiply by 12, was $9,000. So $9,000 on $12,000 is 72%, which is incredible. So this one, we got a lot of money out. Any questions? No?
Yeah. I know.
Once it works out, like the price is right.
Yes.
That one's like.
Okay, so it's north side. It's like the typical like off Alta Road.
Yeah.
It's 1.8. 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,645 square feet. Oh, I'll show you the after. I'm sorry, I didn't show you the after.
320.
Sorry, I didn't show you any photos. So we just painted, carpet cleaning.
What is it? How much?
So that's the thing, right? Is we're gonna, if we sell these, we're probably gonna be dealing with market situations. But remember, we can go back to renting. Correct.
Yeah.
295,
Yeah. about
Anybody over here?
290.
280.
290. Yeah.
11476. Okay.
We're still in 2020. Numbers.
Now that one, when you guys end up needing to do a roof to sell probably to the 08, so we're looking at more cost. to sell.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's where it's a debate of like, we're probably, the goal is, well, let's see what the price is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So.
I feel like
Like I'm on prices, right?
I know, right?
320.
320. So we would be like, no, 300, because I don't believe that the condition, Zill's estimate can't capture the condition.
Yeah.
So with the new roof, we might list it at like what, 290, 300. Yeah. Maybe you need a new HVAC. So it's really gonna depend. Huh? Yeah. So this one is 320. This is in. I have to pull it on the list. Okay.
Neighborhood details.
With that?
Neighborhood details right there.
Oh, where? Sorry.
This came.
Biscayne.
Yeah, so if we like log out, it's
You're
right off.
Close to a lot of new construction there. so it's-
Would that help ourselves? Like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. Cause they'd want, it's selling for good prices in new construction, so ours is gonna compete. Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay. Okay.
So yeah, 320. So then when we look back at,
We had left in the deal 1,200. We bought it, even if we had just gone off of like what we bought it for, so let's just say 150. 150 to 300K.
Yeah, I'll.
Yeah.
that's fine. Bye.
I mean, why would you leave that in?
Yeah, I'm selling.
But the thing is, you take it out if you have another opportunity. So
Yes.
like, well, John would say, my opportunity is not losing value. I'm essentially protecting that 10 to 15% drop potentially in the
True.
next, like, even if you don't put it in anything
Get that return.
and you're
Yeah.
taking it out.
Okay. So that was that one. What's number 3? Wait, shoot, Astral. Okay. Astral is the unique one that we had to redo work twice. And I'll show you why.
You guys already saw that one?
Yes,
Yeah.
that one's sold and I have the numbers for that one. So it's 217.
Okay. Here's the old photos. Yeah, so it was like orange.
What's that in town?
5 points like Murray Hill,
Okay.
yeah.
So you can really see these well, but yeah, they had a bunch of shit in there too.
This was a wholesale deal.
Hmm.
So I'm not gonna say his name because it's embarrassing that he sold it to us for this price, but came to us and I think it was like 120 or something. But yeah, it needed paint. Yeah, badly paint. It just
Yeah.
needed cleaning. We ended up doing all new cabinets. I'll show you guys this. The windows, eventually we had to redo, which we should have just done them in the beginning because it would have been a lot cheaper. So you can kind of get the gist. And now,
That's.
Looks great.
much
Is this the
different.
final?
no, this is not
Oh,
the final.
Great.
4539 Astral.
But
Fine.
when all is said and done and I have the whole amount. Okay, but at the time we thought we were just keeping it as a rental, just do the bare bones.
It looks nice though.
I mean, it was really nice. We had it staged, but all the window, we had the floors refinished. As you can see back here, the bathroom, the fridge used to be in the fridge was in the dining room. And then we didn't ever change it back, and then we had to change it back later because it wasn't selling. So we did list it. So the funny thing is we listed it before interest rates went up in February. Like we listed it in the spring for 300. We got an offer at 285 initially that we were like, no, we're not accepting an offer on the first weekend, as you guys know. And then everything tanked. And then we were getting offers at like 265. And then we were like, what did we just do? And then the offer expired. They weren't interested again, and we had no offers. So we decided to fix it more. So we put in like another 25 grand. And how much did it sell for?
330 something.
What did you buy?
Murray
it for?
Hill?
All right, well, we'll discuss the numbers.
Three
So,
bedroom, 2 bed. Yeah. 3 something.
well, and so this was a while ago. This was our original rehab, but so like 19,000. Yeah, but if we go back to, so we originally bought it from a wholesaler for 124. Yeah, in December 2019, it was a 3-bed, 1.5 bath, 1,405 square feet and built in 1937.
And it's in Riverside.
Yeah, exactly. 531. Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
say that
320.
310.
310.
Okay.
So we made an additional like 20 grand by putting in the work. But at least, even if we had broken even, we would have been like, at least we got an offer. Because at that point, it was kind of scary. I'll tell you. So this was the BRRRR when we did it back in 2018. So 124 plus 18, 19,000, we were all in 143, give or take. 75% of that was 107 back. It appraised for 175. So when we bought it at 120, the wholesaler came back to us, of course, asking for more money because he realized he had made a mistake. So the equity gained immediately was 30 grand.
We got out 118 closing costs. So all in with CapEx, we kept 1908 in the deal. So in all of our situations, we ended up having to keep some money in the deal. There are win-win situations where people have bought it at a more discount. Like this was back in 2019. We weren't even getting it at that much of a discount. And so the goal from like when you read the BRRRR book is that people get all of it back. So the returns are infinite because you get everything back because the goal is that you bought it much less than it was worth. But for us back then, there was still a lot of demand. Prices at that time were still high that we thought. And then, yeah. Rents $1,350, then $1,400, and then $1,750, and then we decided to sell it this past summer. So 42%. I mean, still, it was great. When our annual cash flow $8,000 a year, 42%, and then I don't know if you guys can see that well.
Oh, that's, yeah.
That's so great.
Okay, so this is like the original stuff. So we purchased it. I mean, all in was like 125, right? But our purchase was like 121. I think John had the numbers off. Rehab plus CapEx overall was, that's weird.
It's,
That's not rain. There's no way.
I know, that's not.
All right, well, let me know if I need to yell more. So so that's like all the repairs we ended up doing. So I think this is lumped in with the new repairs. So yes, that would be the new repairs because back then our repairs were only 19,000. And then by the time we were all in it with the mortgage, the rehab. Yeah, I don't know why you put rehab plus CapEx. I don't even know. I always assume CapEx is the rehab, but maybe John defines it differently. I don't know. So let's just say 50 grand. So it went up a lot. And the rent, we made 37,000 over time with the rent. And we sold it for 310 finally in October. So after all the fees, so total investment costs 184 from 310, we made 163. After all was said and done, our net profit was 163. This one, the reason we decided to sell before, this was not even when the market was an issue that we were saying, let's take out our equity off the table. This one was becoming a pain because it was constant repairs. Things were constantly breaking. The tenant quality was awful. Couple people, no, the main one person was spending all our money on drugs, like not good. And we had screened these people, but you could just tell, like, I mean, drugs is different than a pothead. She's basically a pothead, spending all like smelling up the house. Every time we go by there, it was a wreck. Not paying the mortgage on time. And so I think this one was more of a frustration in our portfolio. The other ones weren't causing issues. And we decided to sell this one because we're like, it's the age. I mean, it's what, 1957, 37. I think the roof was coming up, just a lot of things.
Well, when you guys originally listed it, I think like after the first 2 weeks of shopping, like, why are we not getting offers? He also put it up for rent at the same
Yes,
time.
and we
It
didn't get
wasn't even
anybody.
like any good application,
Correct.
So it was like a double whammy. of,
Thank
like,
you.
wait a second.
Yeah, Michelle knows my life.
I get to
Yeah, she gets when I'm like telling my husband, go away. He's like, Michelle, someone will listen to me. Right? So 163, honestly, like it's done. We're good to go. And then the last one we did was Belle Reeve condo. So this one, like I said, we get title insurance on all of them. They thought we had the first mortgage. We did not. We were going through, let's go through old photos. I know, wrong one. Wait, wrong house. Personal investments. Oh yeah, sorry. Photos. All right, so this is after. We don't have before photos, but everything, as you can see, is our typical gray and new floors and fresh and clean. So we were doing rehab. We put a tenant in here,
And then we get a letter saying that they're coming after us because we don't own this house and we bought a second mortgage. And we're like, wait a minute, that's not true. We got title insurance. They told us, well, title messed up, but title paid for their mistakes. I mean, it took a year. So we have the deed and we paid for this, you know, rights to own in cash. And I know, I can't believe it too. And a very good title company. I mean, but they outsource it to Fidelity. It was all Fidelity, you know, they're not in charge of it. Right. So we get this letter. They then send, it's almost like they're lending mafia. Like they like thought they had the rights. And so we have a tenant in there and all our stuff. They break in.
What?
We're calling, being like, because it was like their management company that felt like they had access, just like go in. So then that was an issue. And so we had the rights to rent it. We collected the rent. You know, we had the deed. It took about a year for title to pay off the previous person and us to own it outright. So this was a BRRRR gone wrong because we could not refinance it because we did not have the first mortgage. Or like however it works behind the scenes, like we technically couldn't refinance it.
Yeah, because they won't support.
Right.
them.
We didn't own it outright, if that makes sense. So we just collected the rent until eventually 2 years later, or whenever they did it. Well, this was, here, let's go to the numbers. So please buy title insurance if you ever do this. Yeah, so purchase. So, and I remember, so the funny thing is, I mean, I can remember the Starbucks I'm sitting at. I knew the auction time. I'm ready because I wanted to do this one. Because I said, so here's the thing, equity gained. I knew that the fees were high. I had sold Belle Reef condos before. I knew that it would not make sense potentially for a BRRRR to keep it for rental. So I told John, I was like, this is my project. I'm going to flip it. I'll make like 15, 20 grand. It'll be fine. We get title insurance. We get, cause I was like, what's the, like I said, it's a condo, a 2-bedroom condo. I know the condition of these. What's the, even if I had to replace everything, what's the worst that could happen? So I have my numbers ready. I know the max I'm willing to, I know the max I'm willing to pay. And I forget, like now that I'm thinking back on it, because there was only one, you can see how many people are bidding because it'll say like investor 1 or investor 2 or whatever in the auction. And I remember there was only one other person. I'm like, where are all the people? Right? Well, their title insurance had obviously told them don't.
Oh,
So I don't know at this point because we bought the title policy. The policy's like, you're good to go for it. I have my numbers. I'm ready in the Starbucks and I'm like putting my bids in and I'm fighting against this guy and we keep bidding it up. And I'm like, do I want to spend $500 more, $25 more? I was like, who is this jerk? And I'm like, I'm winning this. Like,
Were we all together doing one of our first meetings talking about the thing when I said during that bid?
I think we were.
We were,
Because I was like, give me a minute. I'm trying to win this.
You don't have an accent where you're like, I'm just gonna go up one more
Little
time.
bit.
And you're like.
Because I was like, oh, because I remember I was like, okay, this doesn't make sense for a BRRRR anymore, but I'll just flip it and make 10 grand. I'm going to win this. I'm going to win it. And it was, I think there was a lot of pride because like my husband was like, I don't want it. It's a condo. And I'm like, I want it. Like, I know that the math makes sense here. And I'm like, who is this dude that keeps running it up with me? Is this a joke? And like, thank God he didn't win because like that would have been awful for him. I don't know. But then part of me wonders, like, was it the original person that had the first more? I don't know.
so does it cost to bid or no?
No, you just put a deposit in the system. Like you have to have your money in the system, like when you win it, that
So
it
has
just
to
draws
fit-
it.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay,
So you-
John, that's-
Yeah, right?
Yeah, that's.
So, so you have to have 5% in the system and then you have to pay at least 5%, that's the deposit, or like 5 or 10%. And then your final amount is due the same day by 4 o'clock.
Oh. okay.
Yeah. So you have to wire it in if you win it. So I was like, whatever, like 75K, these go for 100 grand. Like, I'm gonna get this. So we did end up putting, where's my mouse? It did end up costing about 12,000. Because it needed a new hot water heater, handyman repairs, appliance package, paint. It's about 12,500 and fully involved. But I was like, you know, if I make an extra 10, if I just make some like 10 grand, like that's some spending money for the year. Let's just go. And so the rent
at the time we were collecting was 175, 1280, 1375. We didn't get a mortgage. We couldn't get a mortgage. So we were just collecting cash flow on the rent. So that's why I just kind of put what our monthly cash flow. So if you look at this of 243, that did not make sense to keep as a burn. Some people are like, that's fine. That's my only opportunity. That's all I could afford. $200 a month is, I mean, I'd be like, that's really risky because your repairs could be that. It could eat everything up. But if you're playing an equity game and maybe you want the equity to go up, different methods. But for us, our threshold was at least 400 a month or we weren't even touching it. And so this one was just going to be a flip. So we didn't take a mortgage out. And this was like later when we found out what the repairs were going to be because we didn't know, we couldn't really tell. So we had all the best intentions for a BRRRR and then this one just kind of flopped. And we could not sell it until everybody got paid off. So it was just like well, I guess we'll hold and collect, you know, $1,000. This one, we also got one of the homes. I forgot to tell you guys, Oak Bank, the north side one with the dead woman, had 2 years backlog of HOA that we got a random letter for like $2 to $3 grand. Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't even go over that. So that was an unexpected thing.
There way to go to golf class.
It is. So Michelle, this is so bad. I call my dead lady clubs. Because of my inheritance. I mean, they haven't cursed me yet. Yeah, they work. So thank you, Michelle, for remembering that. So then when we finally got all the liens cleared, we did decide to sell it. And once again, with the HOA fees and everything involved, did not make sense. So yeah. Oh, I didn't tell you. I was gonna have you guys pick the price, but all right, whatever.
Price is right.
Price is right. It's sold at $190. So I got it for 75, give or take. All said and done. I tell John, I didn't make a mistake here. Because he was like, why are you buying this? And my spread was really thin, like it was not gonna work. But hey, we got lucky. It paid off in the end.
Yes, definitely.
So yeah, so like purchase and the rehab and all the fees, 17 grand over time. This was not just the first year that we did it. This was like, you know, we're now thinking of all the selling costs, right? Like everything fully involved. We collected 30 grand in rent. And so the sales price plus the rent of 220 minus the total investment cost of 99K led to a net profit over time of 121. So it was also very lucky with the market, not gonna lie. Otherwise, they would have been great BRRRRs, right? They would have been great BRRRRs. If you think about it, you know, versus putting 25K in and just hoping it goes up and slowly collecting a spread. You know, it wasn't perfect. We'll say that because the goal was that we had gotten all of our money out, but overall worked out pretty good. Questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So what do you guys, I know that you mentioned you're going to be investing into like commercial deals. What type of commercial deals are you guys going to be looking to do?
It's a really good question. So, are you a Momentum champion? Yeah. No, you're not. Okay. Correct. So, with a couple business partners last year, we were able to go in on, I think one was a 40 unit, in Jonesboro, Arkansas. And then we're invested partly in, I want to say it's 100+ units in Alabama. I have to go back and look at our other spreadsheet that we have. But right now we just don't see the opportunity unless you find something at a severe discount in single family anymore. At the volume that we've now siphoned money out of these, you can go into commercial because, and then maybe this is like a misconception, but I think commercial is a bigger game. You need more money, right? So you've been in commercial longer. And so now we finally have the opportunity to go into commercial, especially pooling the investment from everybody in Momentum to say, like, we can go after the bigger opportunities together.
So like apartment building.
Yeah, so apartment buildings. So they find distressed apartment buildings, they have a construction crew and then they rehab them. And then they're essentially BRRRRing commercial. So then they rehab them, pull the money out, pay back the investors, and the investors have a piece of all the future growth.
Oh, nice.
How does it feel to be hands off, like from like dealing
That's
with
the
direct tenants?
Feels good. John is not off because they're calling him for ops help
Ah,
because
that's great stuff.
they're not managing like their systems, like, so we're helping them with their appfolio and like some different things because they're really good at construction and they're really good at finding the deals. But we're realizing that we're really good with our systems and processes and our diligence and our underwriting. And so he did get involved to help them with that. So I wouldn't say he's off yet, but he's trying to set the stage and then like get out. But it's a lot less because of property managers and these guys than him, because we didn't have property. So you probably saw, we don't do property management. We just, if we had the right systems and the right tenant, we were able to manage it ourselves. So it wasn't that, he'd probably say opposite. It was, for what it was worth to just manage it and put everything up front to protect the whole process. It wasn't that bad where we felt like we weren't knowledgeable enough and we were agents. We've been through this. We know the numbers, that it didn't make sense to hire a property manager because they're just going to call you, and we were local. So I think that that's why we never did it. We're local. We can just drive by. We have everybody's direct contact information, and we're in the industry that we have the contractors, everybody, that we didn't really need a property manager. I mean, people do it for different reasons. We just never saw the need because we're systems people. The technology keeps track of everything and we always know where everything's at so that we don't have, like, a lot of people are disorganized. Same reason people hire like TCs and it's just not their skill set, but this is our skill set. So we never really hired property managers.
Sorry.
Yep.
What would you say is your biggest lesson that you learned from this overall experience of doing it? Or would you do it again? If you had the opportunity.
Yes, I would do it again. Not in this market. I would almost say like isolate the equity gains because that's a whole nother story. But if we had not had equity gains like this, where we sold them, I would totally do it again because it made the most sense out of any investment opportunity compared to other methods. But like I said, the cons are you had to have the cash flow to be able to get through the project. And so we, you know, you're paying attention to your budget. We made our money in the sales business, saved it, went really minimalist and recouped every dollar we could to then say, let's invest it. And so I would do it again, but I wouldn't do it in this market. And personally, because of our financial situation and the recoupment of the equity, I personally, but if you talk to me like last year, year before, yeah, I totally would do this again. I think it's a great model. Does that make sense?
Now you kind of found other.
Now there's other opportunities
Yeah.
because
You guys did
we
this.
took out this fund that now we can play bigger
Yeah.
in different things. Yeah. But I mean, like
all of them.
at the time, it was a huge risk for us. Like at the time, if I look back, it was everything we had. I mean, it's a testament to my husband. If you know him, like I'm the conservative one. I don't think I wanted to do this back then. I'd have to think back being like, what are we doing? This is terrifying. And then he pulls out the numbers and he's like, the numbers make sense.
And now we sold two, but we had a portfolio of like 9 to 10 homes that we started back just by buying a primary, then upgrading the primary, then taking that money, refinancing when the equity went up and putting it into investments. So like it made sense then.
Well, let's just say, you guys didn't start with the store method, but you already had rentals, so they were already in. the
Correct.
Side of things, they were already seeing the
Right.
return
Yeah.
as far as the rental rates went, so it wasn't like they went from like.
Nothing
To going straight
yeah.
to BRRRR, right?
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of like that.
Thank you.
Oh, there's less unknown.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
we had rented out, so like,
Some of them
these were our
needed-
purchase prices. So like our first house, we bought for 191, and then we went, that was in Sutton Lakes. We are very accustomed to like this intercoastal west. We live up here. We know the area. We knew it was gonna be stable. And so then, and we didn't have kids then. We had agreed, okay, we make 15, 20 grand extra a year. We're gonna now buy another house. Let's move up. So it was constantly reinvesting and not holding on to cash. And
And so a lot of it is luck with timing in our area, right? Like if we had been in DC area still, there's no way that this would have been able to be the case. But we were in the Jacksonville market. And it's still affordable compared to other areas of the nation. And so that's to say, like, it's not, I don't want to be discouraging, being like, we wouldn't do this right now. But this is a way to see that there are different methods that you can take for granted. And maybe someone comes to you with a deal. And even though we're in this market, it's an amazing situation. Or you meet someone that just really has to get out of their home and they're willing to sell for 50% of what they're worth because they have no other option, you know? And I'm sure you guys still see situations like that where foreclosures are coming back and it may still be pretty cheap. You know, different investors might be coming in, running it up. But if you are diligent with your cash and hold on to it and wait, while everybody else is just trying to survive and getting rid of all their cash, are you going to be set up for a good opportunity? Good questions. Thanks for coming to my class.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hopefully you had some fun with the stories.
I was like, this is really awesome. I never really knew the full big picture.
Yeah.
This is
I
great.
mean, it was fun. I think it's fun to have a partner with it too. You know, we would pack our snacks, we'd have our list, we drive all day, like a road trip in Jacksonville, check out all the properties. We're dealing with some crazy people that would like, we were kind of scared, but we knocked on the door anyway. I sat in the car. I was like, I've got the runaway car. If you need to run to me, hop in. I've got the door open. But most people are normal and they're fine and they're not going to hurt you. You're just trying to, I mean, sound like that. What's that?
Any other questions? Nope. All right. Thank you so much. Oh, we have one right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So this is the BRRRR book. It's by David Green, who owns Bigger Pockets and has a podcast on Bigger Pockets. It's buy, rehab, rent, refinance, or vice versa. You can rent, like we obviously rented sometimes while we were waiting to refinance, or we refinanced and then rented. It just kind of depends, but you can do it simultaneous and then repeat. BRRRR. So this is a lot of details, like,
Yes, it's very, the audiobook is very long.
yeah,
It's like 8
like
hours.
I'd probably say get the real book, like a textbook, and like highlight. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of little creative things that I was like, I can't get into this. Cause obviously this is BRRRR, but like this was our method of how we used it. And there's a lot of different ways people find deals,
Yeah.
creative financing that you could do, but not us. Cool.
Yes, love it.
Thanks for coming.
Yes, thank you so much, Brittany.
That's not.
Funny, like,